So we are really pleased to meet with Lev Grossman for the Magicians and to talk about his work around during this Utopiales 2016. So thank you very much.
It's good to be here.
Donc, first, can you introduce yourself and tell us about your how you came to writing and so on?
Sure. I'm Lev Grossman. I wrote the Magicians trilogy, which is something that I didn't start to write until I was in my 30s. I wrote fiction before then for 15 years. Mm-hmm. It was only very late that I came to writing fantasy, which I had always read, but I never thought that I could write. And yet when I started The Magicians, that I really found my voice as a fiction writer. And it came out of my being a fan, and especially my obsession with the Narnia books by C.S. Lewis, but also Harry Potter and Philip Pullman, George R. R. Martin, Neil Gaiman. And I realized I had to tell that kind of story. I wanted to tell a story about a young person who discovers that he has powers that he didn't know that he had. But I wanted to write it as if for adults, with sort of all those complicated things like drinking and depression and sex and disappointment that usually get left out of fantasy novels. I wanted to put all that stuff in and make it about what it's really like to be somebody in your 20s.
So I could read on a website or I can't remember where exactly, but that your work is a kind of adult Harry Potter for adults. So do you agree with that? Or?
I think that's fair. I think that was concocted by the marketing department of my American publisher, Viking. Nevertheless, I think it's true. It's certainly, Harry Potter was a huge influence on me. I almost found like I was writing in response to Harry Potter, much the same way a writer like Tom Stoppard writes in response to Shakespeare, or Jean Rhys writes in response to Jane Eyre. Mm-hmm. I almost wanted to respond to Harry Potter, respond to Narnia, and rewrite them, putting in all the stuff that I felt was that they sort of didn't cover. I felt as though, I as a 35-year-old man, I really felt very close to Harry Potter. I loved the stories, and yet I was so aware of how different my life was from that of an English schoolboy, sadly. And I wanted to fill in the difference.
You work as a journalist too, and your work as a journalist has an influence in your writing, or?
Writing journalism, it's a good exercise for a fiction writer. Makes you, journalism, you're writing news, you have to write very fast, very clearly, you have to make your deadlines. I think when I started writing was a big mystery to me. I was very dramatic about it, and very sort of precious about it, and I wrote very, very slowly all the time. Journalism fixed all that. I got used to writing quickly, and I didn't make a big production out of it. It's 6 o'clock, it's time to write, let's write something. We need it by Friday, great, you'll have it by Friday.
And it's not difficult to, I mean, as a journalist, it's a short text, and now it's, your novels are pretty, not so big, but it's a novel.
Yeah. I love writing novels. I can write journalism, but one thing I cannot write, with very few exceptions, is short stories. There's a short story in the convention anthology by me. I think it's one of 3 that I've ever written successfully. I've I've written a lot of very bad ones. When I write novels, it's the only time I can sort of expand and take a breath and really say everything that I want to say.
And on the anthology of the Utopiales of this year, you have a short novel around the universe of the magicians. And
Yes.
Can we read it before the novels? It's an introduction.
It's not a bad introduction, even though it takes place after the first book, and it's not really canon. I wrote it as the first chapter of the third book. I didn't use it. I went in a different direction, but I've always loved it. It's about. I always imagined if they were magicians, really were magicians, they'd play a lot of games. It's about magicians who play a kind of war game, just to keep themselves occupied. There's no monsters to fight. There's no Voldemort trying to take over the world. So they play war games with each other. I always thought that that's how it would really work, and that's what the story's about.
And your world, we have magic. How do you think about it? You like Harry Potter. You know the way magic is running there. So
Yes.
in your universe,
It's a little different, yeah. It's very difficult. I never thought the magic in Harry Potter was hard enough. They all struggle with the potions class. It seems a lot like cooking. You know, you've got the recipe and then you do the thing. Magic in the magician's universe, it's very difficult. It takes years and years of study, years and years of work. If you want to do magic, you really have to earn it. You have to pay for it. And maybe it's a little bit wilder than the magic in Harry Potter. I always feel like teaching magic to, kids who are 11 or 12 was a really bad idea. They do really, really stupid things with it. And I wanted to explore that idea. Even with 18, 19-year-olds, if you gave them that kind of power, what would they do? They would immediately screw up in just spectacular ways.
it's a little bit more realistic. I mean, in the way of we can teach and learn in our world. In fact, in the university, I mean, we have to wait to be an adult before to.
Yeah, and then even then, some of us aren't ready to be adults. I had a very difficult time in my 20s finding my path, and I started and abandoned a lot of jobs and a lot of careers. I felt very lost, and I wanted to write about these characters who feel, even though they have all this power, maybe because they have all this power, they feel very lost. They don't know what to do with it.
And do you have any other upcoming projects of novels in the same universe? Other things?
I'm writing a novel about King Arthur, which, when I first had the idea, it seemed like a very bad idea because there have been so many King Arthurs. And yet, it's funny, every generation you see someone retells King Arthur in a new way that kind of reflects what's going on in the world. And I thought, I felt like we don't really have our King Arthur yet. No one's, T.H. White, Marion Zimmer Bradley, they really captured the moment that they were in through that story. And I thought, what would it look like if you wrote it now? And the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I knew what it would look like. And it would start with the death of King Arthur, and be set in the chaos that happens after his death.
And is there other universe, characters you want to write about King Arthur?
The thing I like about the King Arthur thing is everyone's dead. King Arthur's dead, Galahad's dead, Lancelot's alive but he's retired, Tristram's dead. So what you get is stories about all the people at the very edges, little minor characters like Sir Palomides, who is Muslim. There's a Muslim knight. How did he come to England? How does he feel about being there? no one's ever really told that story, or not for a long time. I feel very drawn to it.
So, at last, can you tell us some words about the festival, France? What do you think about your stay here?
It's very nice so far. I've been to a lot of American conventions, and the tone here is very different. Everyone pays very close attention to what's going on. In America, you get into the panel and everyone's on their phone, and they occasionally look up at what's happening, but mostly they look at their phone. People are really listening here. It's very nice. It's a good experience.
Well, thank you very much for your answers, and I hope we could meet you again in the next festival and another one.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you very much.